Many Nuzlockers, including myself, usually have an unspoken rule that we follow, that being having a ban list of Pokemon. These could include Pokemon that you find far too strong, Pokemon that you've used many times before, but most often than not, these lists include legendaries. And it makes sense, right? Like, these are supposedly the strongest Pokemon in a given game, and in many cases you can just use them right out of the box. But I've been rethinking this recently and the validity of it, because as most competitive players will tell you, the title of legendary is just that. A title. It gives you an indication of what stats to expect, but doesn't really speak to its viability. And spoilers, I've already been through this. If you haven't already, please check out my legendary only run in Pokemon Crystal where I give a more expanded pitch. But in short, what we discovered is that 3 out of the 4 legendaries I used were actually kinda bad, and not in a relative to other legendaries kind of way. They were bad in the sense that they were outclassed by regular Pokemon, ones people would usually never consider banning. And I thought the natural progression from there would be to try the legendary trio that are routinely ridiculed as being the worst, the Regi trio. Well, before their Galarian siblings came back from the convenience store. You already know the rules of a hardcore Nuzlocke, so I'll paste them on the screen to read at your own pace. But to summarize, I can't use items in battle, I'll be playing on set mode, and we'll have level caps. There's also one change I'll be making from my last video. Instead of starting with just one mon and gradually adding to my team, I'll just be starting with all of the Regis from the start. This isn't really a how well does Registeel do until the 3rd gym challenge, but rather a way to see how the legendaries perform, and this will give me a better idea of what niches they're able to cover on a more full team. Something I wish I did last time. But with that, let's see if these poor legendaries deserve to be banned on top of being mocked. Well, right out the gate, we've already run into a problem using the Regis as our starters, and some of you already know what's coming. The only move the Regis have at level 5 is Explosion. That's it. So we have 3 Pokemon to use. Let's see how far this will take us. Amazing. We need to think of a workaround. I came up with 2 different plans. A, I start the game with a different legendary. Makes the most sense, right? Hoenn's got a ton of options after all. But here's the thing. Pretty much all of the other options are actually good. Like, you don't need me to tell you that the Lati twins with a massive special attack and almost equally impressive speed stat are insanely good Pokemon. There is actually one Pokemon that isn't as good as one might think, especially in this game, and I'll get around to it. But I decided to go with plan B, which was just to give the Regis their first non-run ending attacking move. After all, I want the Regis to have the spotlight, and they will learn their attack at level 9, with our first level cap being 14. So it's not like we're really affecting any major boss battles anyway. So with that, we head out with our 3 Regis to take over the world. Regi Rock with Rock Throw, Regi Ice with Icy Wind, and Registeel with Metal Claw. And as you can guess, Roxanne can do nothing to Registeel with Metal Claw, which surprisingly already brings us to our most dreaded battle of the entire run. No, seriously. Brawley specializes in fighting types, and guess which weakness all of our cute little golems share? Not only are they weak to fighting, but with how early we are in the game, and them only being level 19, we have like no tools to actually deal with him. We have the respective stab moves, Orange Berries, which spoiler, I forgot about in this run, Rock Tomb from Roxanne, and our only Ray of Hope, the first move they learn, Curse, which raises attack and defense but lowers speed. Sounds good on the surface, and it is, but guess what move the first Pokemon Machop has? Karate Chop, a move with a high chance to crit, and crits bypass defense boosts entirely, and also do double damage. Compound that with super effectiveness, it'll be a one-hit KO. So setting up on Machop is super risky. Guess what move the next Pokemon Meditite has? Focus Punch, a move which if Meditite doesn't get hit on that turn, deals 150 base power with no drawbacks. That's a free super effective Hyper Beam, so we can't even set up on Meditite. Oh, and by the way, none of our attacking moves, except that quirky one, are even 100% accurate, so we even have the chance to just randomly miss. Which means by the time Makihisa comes out, he can just clean up whatever mess Machop left in its wake. And Makihisa himself is not an easy Pokemon to deal with, especially holding a Citrus Berry this early, which basically restores about 60% of its health. Oh, and Brawley even has a Super Potion, which is basically a full restore this early on. And hey look, that's my first run already lost. Seriously, what are we even supposed to do? For my second attempt, I led with the Regi Ice, who was able to outspeed and took Machop's Karate Chop pretty well. We were able to hit all 3 Icy Winds and came out pretty unharmed. Next is Meditite, and both of my Icy Winds hit, meaning Meditite couldn't get off an attack. Pretty clean so far, but out comes Makihisa. At least this time Brawley doesn't have a Super Potion, and we miss our first Icy Wind. Just look at how much Vital Throw does. The only move is to switch into Regirock, who despite being weak to fighting, takes Vital Throw pretty well thanks to its absurd defense. Defense is like the only good thing going for the Regis, and will be very important throughout the run. But what do we do now? That's how much Vital Throw did, and Regirock is my most physically defensive Pokemon. Regi Ice will die on switching, and Registeel will likely die to the next hit after switching in, and I don't think Metal Claw's killing from full. But look how much Rock Throw did versus Vital Throw, and Makuhita still has its Citrus Berry. We aren't winning this one-on-one. Regirock doesn't even have a single attack to hit Makuhita. Or does he? I saw no way out of the situation, and I at least want to see what the rest of the run looks like. I use Explosion, a 250 base power move which also does double damage in this generation to bring the behemoth Makuhita down, but in turn sacrificing Regirock's life. Was all this worth it? Probably not, as losing our only rock type introduces a new common weakness, but it's all I could think of in the moment, which works out perfectly as now we can move on to our second most dreaded fight. Yup, right after this one, and that is May 2. Now I haven't mentioned this yet, but typically when doing challenge runs, I choose the starter that would make the run more difficult for me. This doesn't necessarily need to mean that the starter itself is what does this. More often than not, it's usually to give our rival the starter that will make our lives more difficult. And guess which secondary typing a certain Pokemon gets in this game? Mainly the Dwingle, who goes down easily after missing a Supersonic to a single Icy Wind. And out comes Combusken, a firefighting type. And remember what the last gym was? Well, now it even comes with Ember and Double Kick, which both of my mons are weak to, and which provides both physical and special coverage. On top of that, after switching out, he even sets up a Focus Energy, meaning we could get crit at any moment. Listen, I could go through this battle, but the important point is that we lost, and we likely aren't going to be able to do this without Regirock. I could have used Explosion, but like, are we really going to be doing the rest of the game with Regi Ice? So we're going to need to come up with something. Well, for my next attempt, I realized that instead of taking on the gyms, we can find Steven early and make our way straight to May, with all Regis still alive. As long as we stay within the level cap, we should be fine. This time I actually lead with Regirock against Wingull. The idea was that I could set up curses now with Water Gun being pretty weak, but then we get confused turn 1, then Regirock hits itself. So I decided to get rid of it as soon as possible. And out comes Lombre. I was actually pretty surprised by that, but works out perfectly as I can send out Registeel, who completely walls it, and Lombre is really weak, so we can use this chance to set up all the curses that we want. Despite this, Lombre still survives a Metal Claw, but goes down to the next. And now with Combusken out, he spends his first turn setting up a Focus Energy, while Metal Claw does over half. Ember's probably not getting killed from Hoenn, no. Okay, we survived even with a crit. Another Metal Claw ends this terrifying battle. I don't like relying on these source strats. In fact, I usually opt not to abuse setup moves, but sometimes it's all you can really do. And with us now having access to more Wile, nothing much has changed. We have access to the game corner where we could buy some TMs to teach, but at this stage of the game, there really isn't a reliable and consistent way to make money yet, so I don't really feel comfortable giving myself unlimited money. My plan was actually to head for Verdant Town to get Strength, an 80 base power move, neutral against Brawley, and can be learned by all the Regis. What I neglected to remember was that to get Strength, you need Rock Smash, which to use, you need the third badge, so that was pretty pointless. Look, luckily we're right at the start of the game, and we're playing Gen 3, and I'm using rare candies, so we can get to Brawley in roughly 20 minutes. So frankly, I'm just gonna keep resetting until we get multiple bulk ups while not being crit. Like I said, I don't like using these strats, but will do if I have to. And Reggie still manages to pull this off on the first attempt. After a few curses, I decided not to push my luck, and Metal Claw still doesn't get the one-shot as Machop had been using bulk ups alongside us. But Karate Chop still doesn't get a crit, and the next one gets the kill. Meditite can't do anything as long as the Metal Claw doesn't miss. It hits, and out comes Makuhita. Makuhita uses a turn to bulk up, but even with the defense boost, it can't stop a Metal Claw from getting the one-shot, and we have defeated Brawley with all of the Regis still alive. So the odds are in your favor, but I'm typically not all that lucky. Again, it takes like 20 minutes to get back here, so I personally think while it's not consistent, that this is the best way to get through this battle, considering we still have all of the Regis at our disposal. And what this means is that we can proceed actually playing the game. What's next, but this battle honestly doesn't take that much strategizing. I level up all of my mons to level 24 and train Regirock just high enough to be short of leveling up to 25. I lead it against this Voltorb who gets a turn 1 crit with Spark. I set up a curse and now comes the reason why I led with Regirock. Voltorb goes boom, and look how little its life was worth. It doesn't even trigger my berry. This levels up Regirock, which is important as he now learns Superpower, 120 base power fighting move. at level 25. For some reason, it didn't let me use a curse this turn. Next is Electrike, so I take this as an opportunity to sub the curse that I lost, and its Shockwave puts Rock into range to trigger the berry. It uses a futile howl to raise its attack, and a +2 Rock throw gets the one-shot. And out comes the reason we wanted superpower. And finally its main Electric, and for some reason it uses a howl. The only physical attacking move it has is quick attack. Superpower actually doesn't get the one shot, but Citrus Berry pulls main Electric out of heal range, and then it just goes for another howl for whatever reason. Maybe it's just given up. Another superpower gets us the third badge. It was nice finally having another easy battle, and it was against Watson of all people. But with that, we can use Rock Smash to get strength, and now we have a nice solid 80 BP move that all the Regis can learn with 0 downsides, which comes just in time for another dreaded boss battle, Maxi. Regi Ice is able to get through Martiana really easily, but it's this next Pokemon that's scary. Camerupt is a fire ground type, and that covers all of our mons for super effective damage. Even on the switch to Regirock, it gets off a focus energy, raising its crit chance. We luckily outspeed, strength does about 40%, and for some reason it uses Ember. Another strength puts it into heal range, and out comes magnitude 6, which Regirock eats. I forget how absurd its defensive stats actually are. What was I even worried about? The only thing that would have killed was a crit magnitude 9 or above, which is like a 2% chance even considering the focus energy. Maxi heals, but we outspeed, and strength was a 2-hit KO. So easy. I was actually really concerned coming into this, but Regirock has honestly surprised me. But Maxi wasn't the reason why we needed Regirock. It was Flannery. She uses fire types and 4 Pokemon, which would have absolutely destroyed Regi Ice and Registeel, considering they all know Overheat. But Regirock turns this battle into a joke. Flannery leads with Numble, and the plan is simple. Set up all the curses we want, especially as it wastes a turn to use Sunny Day. The next turn, it actually manages to land a magnitude 9, and look how little it does. We're fine. We've already set up all the curses that we need, but I figure I could at least stall out the sun, and Numble goes down to a single strength. Slugma goes down to a single strength. Camerupt doesn't even have a single ground move, strength. And finally is Torkoal, superpower. I am so glad that I decided to find a way to keep Regirock. Something I didn't mention is that Flannery loves spamming Attract, which typically screws me over, but my poor golems have yet to discover love, which kinda works out in my favor. Well, next up is our absentee father, and the reason we had to make these golems to befriend in the first place. Let's make him regret not showing up for my year 6 school play. Hey, speaking of absentee fathers, please consider liking and subscribing if you're enjoying the video so far, to give me the validation I so desperately need in my life. Spinda has no moves to Registeel except for Teeter Dance, so we can just set up some curses until we break out of confusion. Strength. Next is Slacking, and while we could most likely one-shot, I decide to waste a turn using Curse because I'm terrified of counter. Superpower. Vigoroth. Superpower. And Linoon. Superpower. Easiest battle since Roxanne so far. The Regis are actually surpassing my expectations. In fact, I'd say that they're doing better than the Johto legendaries at the moment. There is one that hasn't really had the spotlight yet, but with access to Surf, you're about to find that Regi Ice may just be the best one. With Surf, a whole bunch of the map opens up, and one thing that we can do immediately is surf towards Slateport to board the abandoned ship. Here we can find the TM for Ice Beam, which means Regi Ice already has access to a stab 95 base power move, right before the flying gym. But that's not all. Back in Morwell, a new side quest has opened up where Watson wants us to shut down the generator, for which he gives us the TM for Thunderbolt, a 95 base power electric move, which Regi Ice can also learn. And in Generation 3, Bolt Beam is a combination that can hit every Pokemon for neutral damage, and this is coming off a base attacking stat of 100, which is pretty decent in this game. This thing is basically going to run through all of the mid to late game trainers. Even May isn't too hard. She's nerfed by the rain, and Thunderbolt is a 2-hit KO this time, though admittedly I did risk a crit. She still has a Lombre for some reason as well. Anyway, the moment we're waiting for, Gym 6. Swablu outspeeds and uses Mirror Move for some reason. Ice Beam. Next is Skarmory, who's the only threat, but we can just switch out to Registeel, who walls, and now has the move Shockwave to eventually whittle it down. Altaria is already out, so I switch back into Regi Ice, who absolutely eats the Earthquake. Another one doesn't even bring it below half, and Ice Beam. Despite having the weakest physical defense, it still has a stat of 100, which is really good. Tropius, Ice Beam, and finally is Pelipper, who tries to stall the inevitable with Protect, but gets electrocuted by Thunderbolt the next turn. And that is possibly the easiest Winona fight I've ever had. Of course I am using legendaries, but how many people were actually expecting the Regis, let alone Regi Ice, to be good? Well, before moving on to the next gym, we have another battle with Maxi and his Camerupt. Will it be more of a threat with higher levels? Well, Myciana's Intimidate doesn't work thanks to the ability Clear Body, and it even doubles our attack with Swagger. We push past the Confusion, and Strength even crits, which Myciana was definitely not surviving. A bit overkill. And out comes Camerupt already. This time Camerupt has no fire moves, but comes with Earthquake and Rock Slide. We can survive at least one. Regirock pushes past the Confusion and hits Superpower, which leaves Camerupt in the red. We get our defense lowered, but Maxi throws by using Amnesia, raising his special defense against a physical attacker. Why? Maxi heals, but Regirock refuses to hit itself. Strength crits, finishing Camerupt off. That was lucky, but we outspeed and we weren't going down to an Earthquake. Finally Crobat, and Regirock still hasn't succumbed to Confusion. Ancient Power ends the battle. I'm glad we never hit ourselves, but why did it last so long? So now we have the clearance to surf towards O. Poor Tentacle's sick. Onto Tate and Liza, who are probably considered to be the hardest gym leaders in this game, but I'm usually not too afraid of them. This time's a little different, however. Last time I played the game, I showcased how you can cheese them with a single dark type, but this time we don't really have the privilege of baiting moves, and this time 2 of their Pokemon have moves that can seriously hurt our little Regis. So, they're a little concerning. They lead with Xatu and Claydol, and I lead with Regi Ice and Regirock. My sophisticated strategy this time is to use moves that do damage. I want to get rid of Claydol as soon as possible since it has Stab Earthquake, which is super effective against 2 of my mons. Oh my god, I knew the stats, but I didn't realize it made that much of a difference. Regirock has the base defense stat of 200 and Regi Ice 100. A super effective Earthquake did about the same to both. I mean, makes sense, but this shows you how good the defensive stats are, especially in the game where the physical special split doesn't exist yet. Ancient Power just misses the kill on Xatu, and Ice Beam gets a crit, one-shotting Claydol. I'm not really sure if that mattered or not, but out comes Solrock, who has a full special moveset despite having a special stat of 55. I'm not sure why this battle feels so hard when they're this bad. Well, after setting up Sunny Day, it can now use a free Solar Beam and a boosted Flamethrower. Both moves I don't want to see. So I double into it with Ice Beam and Ancient Power. Citrus Berry takes Solrock out of heal range. Xatu goes for another Calm Mind, and Solrock uses Psychic on Regirock for some reason. Why not Solar Beam? Ancient Power brings Xatu back into red, and Ice Beam finishes off Solrock. Finally Lunatone's out, and Citrus Berry makes Regirock healthy again. Xatu gets another heal as Lunatone's Psychic brings Regirock low. Ancient Power once again puts Xatu into heal range, and I make the mistake of not doubling into it to feint it. Now they're gonna heal again, and I kinda need Regirock to stay in so we can bring Xatu low. We should survive a non-crit Psychic, but I don't know if it's a roll. Doesn't matter as Lunatone goes for Hypnosis on Regi Ice anyway. Another Ancient Power brings Xatu low, and I get Cold Feet into Registeel. And they had another heal! Registeel takes a Psychic as Regi Ice stays asleep. Xatu uses a Sunny Day for some reason, and Lunatone once again targets Registeel. A Metal Claw just misses the kill, but a Citrus Berry pulls it out of heal range, if they even have any potions left. Regi Ice stays asleep. Xatu uses another Calm Mind, and this time Lunatone targets Regi Ice, bringing it to half. Now this is terrifying. Metal Claw finishes Lunatone off. Xatu could now potentially kill Regi Ice, but it uses Confuse Ray on Registeel instead. Registeel is still able to hit the strength, not doing much at all, and despite the 2 defense boosts, Ice Beam still does about 50%. One last turn. Xatu uses Psychic on Regi Ice, and it survives on a sliver of health. Registeel pushes past the Confusion to finish Xatu off, getting us the 7th badge. I played so badly during the second half of that battle, right after playing pretty well for that first half. I have no clue why I refused to double into Xatu after both Claydol and Solrock were out of the field. That would have made the battle a guaranteed win. Instead, I risked Regi Ice for absolutely no reason. It was actually frustrating watching the footage. I think at the time my thought process was to use Xatu as a way to drain healing items, not realizing that they had 4. But healing wouldn't have been an issue if it was only Lunatone left. I didn't deserve to come out of that unharmed. We have some more story stuff with one last Team Aqua boss battle, but Archie's a joke. Look at his Ace Sharpedo's moveset. It only has Slash and no stab moves at all. And this is the final boss in the storyline. We do at least get Earthquake during the segment, which I can teach to Regirock to basically round off his moveset. We can just move on to the final gym, and truth be told, this was the next boss I was dreading. I actually have no plans for Hoenn and his evasion boosting Kingdra. None of my Pokemon resist its attacks, and the only always hitting move we have is Shockwave on Regi Steel, which will do almost nothing, and any damage we do can be healed up with rest. You thought I played bad during my last battle? I'm about to rely solely on luck for this one. First up's Love Disc. I lead with Regi Ice. Thunderbolt. Whiscash sets up a Rain Dance, but his Earthquake does barely anything, and it goes down to 2 Ice Beams. Celio needs 2 Thunderbolts, but even with Rain, Water Pulse does barely anything. 1 uses up a Hyper Potion, and we can outspeed to use 2 more. Or crit. Crawdon uses a Taunt, but we're only focused on attacking. It goes down to a single Thunderbolt, and out comes Kingdra, who I have absolutely no plans for whatsoever. Kingdra uses a Water Pulse, which doesn't do much, but then confuses. That was so unlucky. Regi Ice is able to push through, and Ice Beam does half. We might actually have this. And the evasion spam begins. We need to get through this as soon as possible. And we snap out of confusion turn 1. And Ice Beam hits, leaving Kingdra on what looks like literally 1 HP. Don't tell me that this was a roll. This is actually the worst luck. 1 heals and Ice Beam misses. It begins. Another double team, but we hit. And look, that's more than half again. Did we actually low roll? Alright, we need to hit 1 as soon as possible. Kingdra uses Water Pulse, good, and we miss Ice Beam. Kingdra uses a Rest, restoring all of its HP back. This battle's lost. And Regi Ice hits Ice Beam, also getting a crit. One-shotting Kingdra. What were even the odds of that? So we did low roll. I honestly did not deserve that win, and I wish I actually came up with a strategy. I'm honestly not sure if I can consider this a lucky battle or not. Hitting Ice Beam at that very moment and also getting a crit is very lucky, don't get me wrong. But what are the odds of Kingdra confusing me with Water Pulse, and then us low rolling on the turn that we needed to do average damage? Well, we won, and that's what's important, but I'm not really too satisfied with this battle. In hindsight, I think the way to win consistently would have been to reteach Regi Ice Amnesia using the move relearner, and to teach it the TM for rest. Then I could just go for a classic PP stall, but that's like a last resort strategy. If you guys have any better ideas, please let me know in the comments. But with all of the gyms done, we can finally take on the League. And we even get 1 new encounter. You may remember at the start of the video, I mentioned that I was considering using another Pokemon as my starter. One who I didn't really think was that good, especially in this game. And that Pokemon is my favorite legendary, Deoxys. Yup, I'm being serious. Deoxys is an amazing Pokemon with amazing stats, and it can even change forms. But that was only introduced in Generation 4. This generation, however, its form is actually based on what game you're playing. In Ruby and Sapphire, it's in its normal form. In Fire Red, it's attacking form. In Leaf Green, it's defensive form. And in this game, it's speed form. As the name suggests, its speed form focuses on speed. It gets a massive 180 base speed stat, which basically made it the fastest non-mega Pokemon in almost 2 decades. But here's the thing about speed. In vanilla games, specifically this generation, trainers don't have EVs, and most of them don't have IVs or a stat boosting nature. And with how limited we still are on Pokemon usage, you'll likely outspeed 95% of Pokemon that you'll face with a base speed stat of 100. Which means 80 stat points are basically wasted on Deoxys speed. And unlike normal and attacking forms, Deoxys speed actually balances out its remaining stats equally, meaning it has attacking stats of 95, which even in this generation, before power creep was really a thing, was pretty okay. Not bad, but not great either. And while 95 base defenses are good, there is one stat Deoxys doesn't change. It's HP, and its base HP is 50, which is pretty awful, and basically nullifies the decent defenses. It will likely go down to 2 neutral attacks anyway. Now this isn't me saying that Deoxys is a bad Pokemon at all, even in its speed form. It's certainly got its uses in competitive formats, but in Nuzlocke, there are other Pokemon that do its job better, which is why it was going to be my starter and why it is going to be my new encounter. Funnily enough, it actually has a pretty awful early game learn set, so it would have made my early game hell, even worse than the Regis. It could honestly make a fun challenge in its own right, but now after defeating all of the gyms and us actually having money, we can buff up his moveset with TMs, which he can actually learn a decent spread of. Also, something new I learned. Apparently mythical Pokemon in this generation come with a flag that makes them never obey you, unless you catch them the old-fashioned way, by getting a ticket from an event that ended 2 decades ago. So naturally I used my time machine and we're now on Birth Island. I used the 1 Master Ball I had to catch Deoxys. Spending our life savings on some TMs, I give Deoxys Thunderbolt and Calm Mind, keep Ice Beam for later, and turn Registeel into a gamer. I also grabbed some Protect TMs for later. Regi Ice and Regi Rock are already more or less set, so after training all of my Pokemon to the level cap of 53, we're ready to take on the Pokemon League. Welcoming us to the league is Sydney. Sydney leads with Mightyena and I send out Regi Ice. Intimidate doesn't work thanks to our ability and Mightyena goes straight for the double edge. We eat and a single Ice Beam picks up the kill. The Ace Absol is already out, so I switch out to Regi Steel as it reads my switch using Swords Dance. Unfortunately, it still uses Rock Slide, which does nothing. And Regi Steel hits back with a superpower to get the one-shot. With Crawdor now, I switch back into Regi Ice on another Swords Dance, but then it throws using another. Regi Ice's Thunderbolt gets the one-shot. Shiftry is the one Pokemon on this team I'm terrified of. It uses Swagger on the first turn and we hit ourselves, but that's only the start. I switch out to Regi Steel and the evasion hacks begin. Another double team and superpower misses. Another double team and then another miss. And then we get confused and hit ourselves. Twice. One last superpower and one last miss. We're now out of superpowers. I can't do anything but switch out at this point into Regi Rock, which may seem stupid, but the only attacking move Shiftry has is Extra Sensory. While Regi Rock does hit itself on the first turn, he's able to hit a superpower, finally bringing Shiftry down. If only we hit that first Ice Beam. But lastly it's Cacturn, so into Regi Ice on the Leech Seed, and for some reason I go for a superpower, which doesn't get the kill. But all Sydney does is heal and an Ice Beam one-shot. That battle lasted far longer than it needed to. I hate evasion hacks. And this isn't even the last time we'll see that strat being used. But we can at least get a few easy wins until then, so on to Phoebe. Phoebe leads with Dusclops and I send out Regi Steel. This one can be kind of annoying with Protect, Confuse Ray and Pressure, but after baiting a full restore with Regi Ice's Ice Beam, I can just Toxic Stall it with Regi Steel. Dusclops not really being able to do anything in return. We're already on the Ace Dusclops, and this one's more focused on attacking, having a wide range of coverage. Luckily for us, Dusclops' attacking stats are just bad. We missed the first Toxic but hit the second, and with us in range of an Earthquake crit, I switch out to Regi Rock, who takes them far better. Now we can just start setting up curses as Toxic eats away at Dusclops. Bayonet uses a weak Feint attack and a boosted Earthquake still isn't able to get the kill. And then Bayonet uses a Grudge, meaning the next attack will lose all of its PP. Luckily I used an Ancient Power to finish Bayonet off, which even with Stab is weaker. Oh god. A boosted Earthquake just misses the kill on Sableye. A full restore and it begins. We finally hit one, but Sableye has a Nightshade. And we hit an Earthquake on the same turn. That could have been concerning. Finally it's Bayonet, who can do nothing. A single Earthquake brings Bayonet low, and Regi Ice finishes the job, winning us the second battle. I honestly forgot that Sableye spammed double team as well, but that wasn't the Pokemon I was talking about earlier. The next battle is actually an easy win. Glacia leads with Celio, and this time I bring out the long dormant Deoxys, who's holding a Lumberry. And what we're gonna do is keep setting up Calm Minds while recovering any damage we take, until Deoxys gets paralyzed by Body Slam. Which it never does. I figure I may as well stall out the hail, and a boosted Thunderbolt takes care of Celio. Glalie could have been scary as it has Crunch, but a Psychic gets the one-shot. Glalie, Psychic. Celio, Thunderbolt. Rain, Thunderbolt. Nice and quick this time, and the next one is actually not going to be much harder. Drake leads with Shelgon, and I once again lead with Deoxys. I again spend the first turn setting up a Calm Mind. Shelgon uses a Rock Tomb lowering our speed, but with our absurd speed stat, we're still outspeeding the remaining Mons. Ice Beam gets the one-shot. Flygon, Ice Beam. Salamence, Ice Beam. Altaria, Ice Beam. And now he sends out Kingdra, the only Pokemon I can't hit for super effective damage. What took so long? Ice Beam does over half, and all Kingdra can do is use a weak Body Slam, which doesn't even paralyze. I had a Lumberry just in case. Another Ice Beam gets the kill and wins us our final Elite Four battle. Now, so far the battles have been pretty easy, right? Like, Deoxys obviously made these last two battles easier, but the Regis could have still pulled off a win, albeit with some more hardships. So why did we even need to add Deoxys? Well, that's because, with all of my theory crafting, I could not think of a single way to beat Wallace with only the Regis. He uses a full water team, and none of the Regis resist water. Adding to that, a significant number of his team have super effective moves against us. And with him having 6 Pokemon and us 3, with no reliable recovery, I just couldn't think of a consistent way to beat him. And none of that is even accounting for the one Pokemon that'll be the death of me. I reteach Deoxys Psychic over Ice Beam using the TM found in Victory Road, and give Regi Ice Protect over Curse. Time for our final battle against Champion Wallace. Wallace leads with Wailord, and I start the battle with Regi Ice. I'm terrified of a water spout, so as Wailord sets up rain, Regi Ice uses a Thunderbolt to bring Wailord low. Despite this, Wailord still uses a weak water spout, which of course crits, and still does less than half, even under rain. Another Thunderbolt finishes it off. Next is Tentacruel, and I have two objectives. One is to stall out the rain, and two is to stall out Tentacruel's Hydro Pumps. We protect the first turn, and despite the rain being up, Tentacruel still uses Toxic. I switch out to Registeel as Toxic fails, and another Protect baits the Hydro Pump. We need to take the next one, which does about 25%, and I use Metal Claw just to waste a turn. Another Protect, another Hydro Pump. Even the next Hydro Pump hits. And of course crits. We really didn't want to see that. Regardless, Registeel survives and our Citrus Berry is triggered. One more Protect, and out comes the last Hydro Pump. Back into Regi Ice on the weak Ice Beam, which also crits. What's happening? But this at least lets us eat our berry. Now to Regirock on the not very effective Sludge Bomb. Tentacruel is able to get off a Toxic, and an Earthquake is able to finish Tentacruel off. Gyarados was actually a surprise to see. I was expecting something else. But we can now sack Regirock, so a Surf brings us low. Ancient Power. Crits getting the kill. Would you believe me if I told you I didn't want to see that? But down goes Gyarados, and out comes the Pokemon from our nightmares. Ludicolo is a dirty little double team abuser, and none of our Pokemon can two-shot it, let alone one-shot it. On top of that, Ludicolo gets Leech Seed, a move that will passively drain HP from us and regain its own, and if we choose to switch out, it gets another turn to set up a double team. It also has Giga Drain, which is a way to directly attack us while also gaining HP back. The reason I wanted Gyarados alive was to bring in Deoxys in hopes that another Pokemon will be sent out, on which I can set up. But now we're trapped in here with him. Why did I attack? Regirock's done plenty. I let him rest before witnessing the massacre of his siblings. Next into Registeel. Now I'm reaching here, but I think we should survive an attack. Which we do. Registeel gets off a Toxic, and I let him too rest. And now we can bring out Deoxys as soon as possible, with our next steps being purely reliant on luck. We need to set up as many Calm Minds as we can while recovering any damage we take, all while hoping Ludicolo uses minimal double teams and doesn't once get a crit. At the very least, both of its attacking moves are special, which we're raising our defense for, and Toxic is also slowly bringing its health down. But this brings us to a difficult decision. Another turn of poison damage, and Ludicolo will be in heal range. If we attack and hit it now, we could finish it off and sweep, but at this stage, Ludicolo has two double teams set up, and if we miss, a Surf could kill. Deoxys is far too important for the rest of the battle, so I play it safe and heal. As Ludicolo sets up another double team, I'm an idiot. I cave and just set up all the Calm Minds I can. I don't even pay attention to how many double teams Ludicolo sets up. In all honesty, it doesn't even matter anymore. All that matters is that we hit one attack. We have 10 Psychics and 14 Thunderbolts, of which we need to keep one of both. The first one misses. The second one hits. Ludicolo gets brought down. That was insanely lucky. Forget about how many unlucky crits I got that brought me here. It was all worth it to see an evasion spam not pay off. A +6 Psychic one-shots Whiscash, and a +6 super effective Thunderbolt puts an end to my low tick. And the Nuzlocke. What a way to end the challenge. Getting through Brawley was painful, but I had the knowledge that I could get back there in no time at all. But watching my plan slowly crumble around me to not get one, not two, but 4 unlucky crits was honestly nerve-wracking. But it was all worth it to see that stupid Ludicolo punished for using such a scummy tactic. And now we can answer the main question of this challenge. How good are the Regis, and do they deserve to be banned? No, of course not. They were nowhere near strong enough to deserve a ban, and you didn't need to watch the video to know that. But I will say, they were a lot better than I was expecting, and they honestly surpassed any expectations I had with how well they performed in this region. Sure, Brawley was annoying, but you won't be using them that early anyway. From the point you do have access to them, however, they actually could fill a role on many teams without being outright broken. And now that I've done this challenge in 2 games, I figured why not keep track of how I found the legendaries on a tier list. They're still relevant, right? We're still in 2020. As a disclaimer, all of these are my personal opinions for my own personal runs, and obviously whether or not you use legendaries is up to what you find fun and not what some random person online says. To give you a quick rundown on my tiers and what they mean, S is for legendaries that are straight up broken and should be banned in most challenges. A is a bit more nuanced, where I think they're extremely good legendaries, but the decision to ban them should be based on how confident you feel. Experienced players probably should, and more casual ones probably don't need to. Think Gyarados from Gen 4 onwards. B is where we start getting to legendaries I don't think deserve to be banned at all. These legendaries are still really good Pokemon who give ordinary ones a run for their money, but still compete with other top Pokemon for their roles. Ones that you'd usually not ban. C is where I think they start becoming mediocre. Sure, they may be able to fill a role on your team, but there are plenty of other ordinary options that could do the same job, maybe even better. And finally, D is for legendaries I think are just bad. You'd almost be better off using another ordinary Pokemon entirely, which will fill the role better, instead of wasting the time and resources catching this legendary. For clarification, these tiers are relative to legendaries. Me giving a legendary a C is not the same as me giving an ordinary Pokemon a C. After all, they are legendaries. Even if they aren't great, their stats will still allow them to at least put in some work. And I'll be judging how well they perform in the game they're in, indicated by the sprites. Crystal Suicune is different to Hard Gold Suicune. Before talking about this gen, let's retroactively fill out the list with Pokemon from my previous run. But I'll be going over them quickly, so please watch my last video if you haven't for more in-depth thoughts. First up is the Pokemon I use the most, Suicune. Now, I was on the fence while playing through the game and while making my video, but after thinking about it, I think Suicune can be put in the A tier. As long as you don't set it out against mons it's weak to, it's almost unkillable. Pair that with the fact that it gets access to Stab Surf early, and Aurora Beam plus Bite, all of which are special moves coming off a 95 base special attack. I think there's a solid argument to ban it, but also one to not. Next is Raikou, who we're actually going to skip a tier for to put right into the B tier. It honestly is not that good in Crystal, with the strongest stab move it gets being Spark until you reach Kanto. It has pretty good stats and some coverage with Bite, but honestly if you want an electric type, there are better, more consistent options, who even get better attacks. And poor Entei is gonna sit in the D tier. It is honestly just not very good. The strongest stab move it has is Ember until Kanto, and that's coming off a mediocre 90 base special attack. Even the physical moves it gets coming off its better attack just aren't very good. The best move it has is Strength, unless you're willing to risk some accuracy for Iron Tail. And this isn't a generation where fire types just aren't very good either. You're much better off using Arcanine instead, who has a better special attacking stat and can also get Flame Wheel and Flamethrower. Lastly, it's Celebi, who surprisingly enough, I'm also going to put in the C tier. It gets no grass moves by level up, and the only psychic move it gets is Confusion. You need TMs to make it somewhat decent, and both of its stab TMs are only found in Kanto, after you've defeated the League. Its only saving grace are decent stats, and some defensive moves like Lead Seed and Recover, so you could set up a stall if you wanted. But with how many common weaknesses it has, it really doesn't do much for it, and even C might be too generous. But now let's talk about the stars of this run. Their stats, especially in this generation where the physical special split doesn't exist yet, are honestly amazing defensively, with them all being almost unkillable as long as you send them out against the right mons. Regi Ice comes with Bolt Beam coverage off a 100 base special attack, and can eat any special moves that are thrown at it, even super effective ones. Bolt Beam covers every single Pokemon in this game for neutral damage, so Regi Ice hits hard. There really isn't another Pokemon in this game that can do something similar, but it does however need TMs to fulfill this role, so I think it deserves to be a high B tier. Regirock is slightly less better at attacking, but still gets an early superpower off a 100 base attack, plus can learn Earthquake through a TM. And similar to Regi Ice, walls any physical moves, even super effective ones. And with how it can spam Curse against the right Pokemon, I think it deserves being in B as well. Registeel is a steel type with massive defenses that are balanced equally in both stats. That's all I need to say about it. Just don't send it out against a Pokemon with super effective attacks, and it will never die. Pair all that with how limited some of the enemy movesets still are in this game. The Regis, while not ban-worthy, are still formidable Pokemon to have on a team and deserve more respect. While it is really bulky, it can't really do much in return without Toxic, a one-use TM, so I think it can stay in B. What really hurts all of them, I think, is that despite them being defensive Pokemon, they have no reliable recovery. Like, why didn't they get Recover? I swear that would have fit thematically for them, being Titans that use terrain around them to restore themselves. Though I think that may push me to ban them. Ironically, I think they actually get worse as the generations go on. Not necessarily because they get nerfed, but other Pokemon just keep getting better and get more tools to deal with them, while they just get left in the dust. But that's a discussion for a future run. Deoxys is a funny one. I think both the normal form and the attack form should always be banned, but the defense and speed ones are more debatable. Defense gets Recover, so I'm leaning more towards banning it, but speed honestly has other Pokemon that compete for its role, like Alakazam and Gardevoir, who even hit harder. But because of its speed, OK bulk, and access to Calm Mind and Recover, I think I'll personally ban it myself, but it's arguable either way. I think those sentiments reflect Tier A. And I think that's all I have to say about the matter. The Regis did far better than I was expecting, because honestly, I was expecting them to be trash. But they really did hold up well throughout the run. So please let me know what legendaries you'd like me to try out next in the comments, and look forward to more videos in the future.